guys can drop the lights if you want. Bam! Let's see if it works. Oh, look at that. Cool. This is what up all night doing for you guys. It's at midnight and I'm still drawing this crap. Yelling at my wife. You go to bed. I'm so tired. Right? Okay.
She's over there sleeping.
Yeah. I'm not a particularly enlightened individual. I have my moments. Especially I'm tired. I got to get up at 4:30 in the morning, so I can get here on time. It's no fun. But yeah. I'm glad I don't have kids because, boy, it'd be rough. But then again, I probably missed something very important by not having kids as well. So who knows? Okay, guys. Today we're not going to go into physiology very detailed. We'll save that for tomorrow. But I just want to review the essential anatomy, and it's some of the essential physiology. So first of all, and in your reading it also talks about this nephrology versus urology. So nephrology is really, the focus is on the kidney itself, the renal, right? So neph is kidney, whereas urology is focusing on the urinary tract itself, right? So there is kind of a subtle difference there. Okay, so what is the functional organ of the urological system?
Urological?
Yeah, the functional organ of your urinary system, we'll say. The kidney, right? So the kidney is your functional organ, and actually there are several organs involved, but this is the functional organ as far as what's going on to make the urine. You guys okay with that? Okay, so basically what happens is, and you guys know this, right? So blood comes out of your aorta through the renal arteries, right? Blood goes into your kidneys, and where are your kidneys located? They are not technically within the peritoneal cavity, right? They are located behind the peritoneal cavity in what's known as the retroperitoneal cavity, right? Or, retro, behind, right? Right, you have one on each side. The kidneys are slightly smaller than a fist. Okay, not quite fist size, but a little smaller than a fist. All right, and you have a right one, you have a left one, and then you have a right renal artery and a left renal artery, and blood goes into the kidneys. Something happens to that blood, and then blood flows out of the kidneys through the renal veins into the inferior vena cava or vena cava, and so on and so forth. And then as the blood goes through, urine comes out, right? Comes out through this structure here known as the pelvis, through the ureter. You have peristalsis occurring within the ureters. Ureters are a small muscular tubes that then carry the urine to a sac-like storage structure known as the urinary bladder. And you have a sphincter here, which closes, and the sphincters are a little different in men and women, but that's not relevant for today. And then when you urinate, the urine leaves through a tube known as the urethra. In the male, the urethra tends to be longer than the female, which means women are much more prone to developing what? Urinary tract infections, lower UTIs, because their urethra is much smaller and it is much easier for bacteria to get in and colonize the urinary bladder and associated structures. You guys cool with that? However, men are at a disadvantage in this sense in that they have some accessory structures. For example, the prostate gland, right? And where does the prostate gland? Kind of wraps around the urethra, right? And we know as we age and as other things happen, that gland can become enlarged, right? Can undergo what's known as hyperplasia, right? Where you have cell growth. The gland gets larger and it can occlude the urethra, and it can cause urinary retention and difficulty urinating, right? And sometimes it can even become cancerous as well. You guys okay with that? Okay, so that's a big picture. So let's now take the kidney and take a slice through the side of it here and take a look at it. So going into the kidney, I have got the renal artery here, and then coming out of the kidney, I've got the renal vein. all right? And if you take a look at the kidney, you can see that the kidney is divided into 3 distinct sections. You have the outer section here, which is known as the renal cortex, right? And then you have these inner sections here, okay, where it's a little darker, and these little darker sections have kind of a pyramid-like appearance to them, and these are called the renal pyramids, and they are deep to the renal cortex, and this is known as the renal medulla, right? You guys okay with that? And then you have this inner part here, okay, this inner part here of the kidney as well. These are the minor calyx are these little collecting tubes, and then when the minor calyxes come in to a larger open area, these are called your major calyxes, and then that eventually becomes the pelvis here, right? And then the urine drops down to the ureter. You have peristalsis of the ureter that flushes that urine on down. You guys cool with that? Makes sense? Is that anything new at this point? Nope, shouldn't be. Okay, so what are the major functions of our kidneys?
Water retention.
Okay, so water volume, right? Right, acid-base balance, electrolyte balance, which of course involves water balance as well. Do they have a hormone or an endocrine function? Yes. What are the major hormones that your kidneys secrete? Renin and no. Renin and totally unrelated to. We talked about this. This happens.
It sends it to the spleen, right?
No.
To create red blood cells?
Yes, to create red blood cells, but they're bone marrow, right? Your progenitor. Red blood cell progenitors are in bone marrow, right? What is that hormone called? What's that? I thought I heard
I
it.
mean, it's the EPO, I don't know.
Right, it's called erythropoietin, right? EPO, erythropoietin. Renin erythropoietin, right? Regulate the vascular volume, like we talked about. Regulate osmolality/osmolarity, and we'll talk about what the difference between those two things is. They can undergo gluconeogenesis in times of severe stress or starvation, okay? And then, of course, they excrete waste products. One of the major waste products that gets excreted, a normal waste product, is ammonia. Wait, what? Ammonia?
That's the whole point.
Did I just say ammonia?
Interplay between liver and kidney.
Yeah, what, didn't I just say that, wasn't there another organ that takes care of ammonia? Ah, and you're absolutely right, Coulter, there comes that interplay, right? So there's something called the Urea Cycle. So remember, what are proteins made up of? They're made up of amino acids, right? Individual amino acids are bound together, right? The amine group of one bonds to the carboxyl group of another in something called a peptide bond, right? And that's how you make polypeptides, and then enough polypeptides, eventually you end up with proteins, right? You get folding into your secondary, tertiary, quaternary structure, and you get your protein. When proteins are made up and broken down, you have a lot of ammonia that's produced. And just like I said, ammonia is processed in the liver, and basically what happens is ammonia is turned into a slightly less toxic molecule known as urea. And then it is the urea that is either eliminated or preserved via the kidneys. So are you okay with that kind of that interplay between, the direct interplay between the liver and the kidneys, involving what's known as the urea cycle? Okay? And that's why when you get urine that sits somewhere, what tends to happen? What does it smell like? Kind of has an ammonia smell as that urea kind of breaks down a little bit into its ammonia. Or as bacteria metabolize that urea back into its ammonia base. You guys okay with that? Okie dokie. So the renal system requires a lot of blood. At any given time, up to approximately 20% of your blood volume will actually be within your kidneys. That's an incredible amount of blood if you think about it, right? And your kidneys will see approximately 400 liters of blood per day. So about 400 liters of blood per day will circulate through your kidneys. Well, how many liters of blood do you have in a normal adult person?
7.
Right? 4 to 8, so like 6, on the average, right? So that's what, 6, you're looking at how many times your blood volume per day. Well, 6 goes into 40, that's,
6.5.
yeah, so about 7, 6.5, 7. So 6.5 to 7 times a day, your entire blood volume goes through your kidneys, if you want to think about that. Pretty cool, huh? Quite a bit. Right? More or less. We may be off a little bit, but, hey, you get the idea, right? Okay. And of those 400 liters that go through your kidneys, you produce approximately 2 liters of urine per day. This is an adult patient. And a number that you guys want to know is normal adult output, and we've talked about this in cardiology as well, but your normal adult urinary output is about 0.5 to 1 milliliter per kilogram per hour. Okay, that's if your kidneys are being perfused normally, that's what we should see. This tends to be much higher in kids, 1 to 2 milliliters per kilogram per hour, and in infants it may even be as high as 3 to 4.
So I got the math wrong. It's 65 times.
There we go, 65, yeah.
My bad. Missed that
Yeah.
0 again.
I was about to say, well, maybe we're off by an order of magnitude, but it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
65.
Yeah. So there you
That's
go.
more significant.
There, yes, it is. So you think about it, 65 to 70 times a day, your entire blood volume circulates through your kidneys. So clearly they're kind of important, right? You guys cool with that? So not only do they act as and we like to think of them as a filter, right? Would you guys, when you think of a kidney, you kind of think of it as a filter? Well, that's part of the story, but just remember, there's acid-base balance going on. There is a hormonal, right? You've got endocrine functions going on. You've got gluconeogenesis. You've got a lot of nuanced stuff going on with your kidneys. Okay, so let's take a look at the kidneys in a little more detail, the physiology. And this is going to be just a basic review. Tomorrow we'll go very deep into how these mechanisms actually work. So what is the functional unit of your kidneys? The nephron. Is a nephron a cell? It is not a cell. You're absolutely right. It is many different types of cells working together to make a unit. Okay? A nephron is somewhat analogous to an islet of Langerhans. Remember the islets of Langerhans? In the pancreas. The islet unit contains multiple cells, right? It contains alpha, beta, delta cells, right? The nephron contains many different types of cells. So it's not a cell, but it is a structure. It is a microscopic structure. So what I've done here is I've taken a cross-section through my kidney, okay, starting at the cortex and going all the way down into the medulla, near the calyx here. You guys cool with that? So if I take a thin little cross section out there, microscopic little section of this, and I look at it in detail, I'm going to get something that looks sort of like this. Okay, and this is called the nephron. The nephron is the functional unit of the kidneys. And we have about 2.5, 3 million nephrons between both of our kidneys. About 1.5 million or so per kidney, okay? So a few million, 2, 3 million nephrons do the job. So what's going on within these nephrons? Well, you have the upper part of your nephron here. And do you guys see this little dashed line here? This little dashed line is the dividing line between the cortex up here and the medulla down here. You guys okay with that? So some of the nephron exists up in this area, and some of the nephron exists down here. So what happens is the renal artery, oops, you guys see the renal artery here? So the renal artery comes in and it becomes arterioles, right? It branches out, becomes smaller and smaller. And so what you have is you have an arteriole that comes in, and ultimately this goes to the renal artery. So blood's coming into the renal artery, branches out into the little arterioles, right? And you've got, a few million of these now. And it flows through the arteriole into this ball-like structure here. And this ball-like structure is known as a Bowman's capsule. And within the Bowman's capsule, you have a capillary network known as the glomerulus. Are you okay with that? So you got your little Bowman's capsule here, and you've got your glomerulus inside of there. Are you guys okay with that? And so you have the arteriole, which is blood going into the Bowman's capsule or the glomerulus, and that is called your afferent going in, and then your efferent is going away, just like the brain. Afferent's coming into the brain, efferent's coming out. So you have your afferent arteriole and your efferent arteriole. That's blood leaving the glomerulus or the Bowman's capsule. You guys okay with that? Okay. So far, so good. And there are 4 major functions that we see within the nephron. The first of which is called filtration. Okay? Filtration. And filtration occurs primarily within the glomerulus, within the Bowman's capsule. The blood is, quote unquote, filtered. Okay? That is, stuff is removed from the blood. And the way that filtration works with your kidneys is it's kind of like, think of an analogy of cleaning your refrigerator. Okay? So let's say you have a bunch of nasty stuff in your refrigerator. What's one way you could clean the refrigerator? You could open it up and you could pick individual things out, right? Well, the way filtration works is the other way, where you take everything out of your refrigerator, right? And then the good stuff you put back in and you leave the bad stuff out, right? So filtration is everything, right? So right through here, and we'll talk about the nuance of this tomorrow, but you have filtration occurring, and then you have what's called filtrate right here in the first section of the nephron following the Bowman's capsule. And after you get out of the Bowman's capsule, you have 3 sections. You have this curvy section right here, which is proximal to the Bowman's capsule, which is known as the proximal convoluted tubule. And then you have this loop that goes down, which is known as the loop of Henle. And, well, actually, the loop of Henle is just this part here. There are 3 parts to this loop here. You have the descending limb, which goes away. It's going away from the Bowman's capsule. You have the loop of Henle here, and then you have the ascending limb here. Okay? So you have your proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, loop of Henle, ascending limb. And then finally, you have this twisty little tubule here, which is furthest away from the Bowman's capsule, except it actually loops back and touches the Bowman's capsule, but it is furthest away, and this is what's known as the distal convoluted tubule. And then that distal convoluted tubule then dumps urine. Okay, so you have concentrate here and urine at the end into what's called the collecting duct. And then the collecting duct, so then you have all of these you have multiple, right? Multiple distal tubules dumping urine into the collecting duct, and the collecting ducts eventually go into a minor calyx, and then the minor calyx eventually goes into a major calyx, and then that eventually goes into the pelvis, ureter, bladder, urethra, out of the body. You guys cool with that? Okay. So, you have filtration occurring here, and then the next major function is something called reabsorption. Okay? And reabsorption is stuff going back into the blood, gets reabsorbed back into the blood. So that is, going back to the refrigerator analogy, that is the good stuff gets put back into the refrigerator. Are you guys cool with that? That's reabsorption. Does that make sense? Okay, so you filter everything out. Then you reabsorb the good stuff back into your blood. All right. And the bad stuff is secreted. It stays in the tubules, right? The bad stuff, the stuff you want to get rid of, not necessarily bad, but you want to get rid of it. And then what is the actual act of getting rid of it? Excretion. Okay, elimination via the urine. So are you guys okay with filtration, reabsorption, secretion, and elimination? Okay? Now, we don't have to know what is going on exactly at the nephron. We will talk about that in gory detail tomorrow. Okay? But do you guys understand in general what is occurring where? You guys cool with that? All right. That's all the further we need.